ready for the Bob Graham Experience.
Hey, Joe, it's great to have you here today. I mean, this is really a treat for me. You and I talk a couple times a year. We get together for lunch. We always kick things around. You're one of those inspirations to me. I love the work you're doing, and I can't wait to share what you're up to with the world. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I was excited for this podcast. So I appreciate you including me and having me on.
Okay, well, you're getting the whole Bob Graham experience. Jazz hands. See, that's it. Jazz hands. Thank you. I'm going to make that a thing. The Bob Graham experience with the jazz hands.
Got to do the jazz hands.
That's it. But poor people listening on audio are just going to have to deal with it. You know, they'll have to picture jazz hands. So tell me this. I'm going to ask you some questions, of course. First question, what's a good work day for you?
Good work day. That's a great question. I like to get any of the heavy lifting or heavy thinking in the morning. I don't do big lunches anymore. That used to kill, some motivation in the afternoons. But before the day gets away from you, I like to kind of plan things out. Couple of meetings with clients I really like working with, and then having some time in the afternoon to kind of do some wrap up and answer emails that come throughout the day, and then get home in order to be available and have dinner with the family and whatever we have going on that night. So that's a perfect day in my book.
How often does that happen for you?
I have been very intentional about trying to create that work-life balance from the beginning.
Okay.
So I would see advisors that I worked with, and they were in the office late, and I don't know that it was super productive, but I always wanted to get my stuff done so that I could go home and be there with the kids. And that was even before I had kids. So I don't really do a whole lot of evenings. I do not do weekends. That was a rule I kind of started for myself. I think when you're just getting started, whether you're a financial advisor or whatever business, you just say yes to everything until you get to a point where you start saying no to things because you're forced to. So I didn't want to fall into that trap. So I tried to just block off and set the expectation with clients and people at work, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I'm your guy, but outside of those hours, we'll just reconnect later.
Okay. What drives your work for you? What drives you to go into work each day?
I was talking over you. I'm sorry, Bob.
I'm sorry. What drives you to work each day? What makes you want to go in there and do your thing?
So I would say early in my career, runners describe this runner high that they get. I'm not a runner, so I think the closest thing that I have is the high you get from benefiting somebody, and you get that little light bulb moment that goes off in a meeting where you're describing something that maybe is complicated to them, or it just is complicated. You make it easy. That's what drives me, especially in the beginning part of my career. I still have that very much, but now as we've grown the business and we've got a team in place, I just like seeing other people succeed. And if I can create a situation where they can go farther than maybe they thought originally, help more people, instead of playing the game as much as I did before, now coaching it a little bit more, I found is actually even more satisfying than being the one in the meetings all the time and doing all the talking.
Okay. Wow. That's a pretty interesting shift because you're not the oldest guy in the world. I mean, you're pretty young to have that transition. Usually guys in their 50s, 60s get there. You're there a lot sooner. What do you attribute that to?
I think, what I mentioned, some of the guys that I used to work with, advisors from the group I came from previously, I really paid attention. I was there. I didn't know a whole lot about the business. I just knew that we could help people, but I was a sponge and I soaked up everything. Good, and observed the not so good and the pitfalls that I would try to avoid. And I think a lot of times small business owners, they have it in their head that they want to do their own thing. And it doesn't matter if you're a financial advisor, a plumber, or whatever. You go, hang out your shingle, you strike it on your own, but then you've got all these spinning plates, and you got payroll, and you got this, and you got that, and I think a lot of times business owners fall into the trap of trying to do everything and be all things to all people, and I just saw that wouldn't be sustainable, especially if I'm younger. I don't want to get burnt out before the age of 40. So how can I create a good pace where, I'm efficient with my time, we do everything that we need to, and we're trying to not go the long way when a shorter path will take you there. I think a lot of times people, I've heard the phrase play office, it makes them feel important, but it doesn't really move the needle for anybody. Those are very easy to delegate tasks. So I learned a lot from the folks, and I've always been a little bit of an old soul. So I'm 38, going on probably 58 or 68. So I really just kind of pictured what I would like the business to be if I'm fortunate enough to grow it to a certain point, and I was lucky enough to do that early. And just continue to see be a student of the industry, look at what other people are doing, learning from peers, and I think most importantly, learning what not to do. And if you can avoid those things, gives you more time and energy to focus on the things that have an impact and help people and grow the business and all the good stuff.
Do you have a short list of the things not to do that might save some people some time? I mean, do you have like 3 off the top of your head? You're like, absolutely don't do A, B, and C, or is it more broad than that? Or
I think I could go through a couple. I don't have like a commandments list or anything.
Well,
but
I don't want to give away your whole secrets, but you brought it up, and it sounds like you really studied and got a degree in what not to do. And it's very rare that someone says it like that.
I think a lot of the pitfalls, and not just in my profession, but people want to build the perfect thing. Like any business is really like a factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where whatever your goods or services that you create is kind of the machine. And you got to keep people going through the machine. Well, a lot of times business owners try to create the perfect machine.
Okay.
And they spend all this time and they spin their wheels trying to make the perfect offering, where, a lot of times you just got to do it. Like I'm going to make this as good as I possibly can.
You're not talking about this podcast, are you, Joe?
No,
just do it, not making it perfect. I mean, it's okay if you are. I get it.
Well, maybe I'll have to watch a few more episodes and then
that's it. Okay.
Assessment. But I would see, just for financial advisors, the perfect planning software, the perfect. But the thing is, perfect doesn't exist in the real world. So instead of pursuing perfection, I try to think of it as just improvement, right?
Yeah.
Observe, assess, get a good game plan together. But as Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a game plan until you get punched in the mouth. So that there's going to be twists and turns, and you just have to roll with it, but don't let that get in the way of actually taking a step and taking action.
Okay.
So that would be one. And then the other thing too is it's okay to not be all things to all people. I know, again, I'm just going to speak from my industry experience. Some advisors are like, I'm 24/7. You can call me anytime. Email. I don't look at my emails in the evening because I know that there's really nothing I'm going to be able to do about maybe a simple client request where they've got investments at a different company, but it's after business hours, things are closed. So all I'm going to do is think about that email instead of being present with my family. And I can't do anything about it until I come in the morning anyway. So, so I'm not 24/7, but when I am in the office and focused, you get my 110% attention and all the efforts and what I have to offer. So trying not to be all things to all people. One thing I disagree with in the beginning is people say you got to pay your dues and you got to take business that maybe isn't a good fit. I remember I had one meeting. I was with a family friend, and I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I was taking whatever meetings I could get. And I show up to the guy's house, and I'm wearing a suit, which I don't wear anymore. And I had the tie and the whole thing, and knock on the door, and I got my leather briefcase, and he shows up, and he's wearing nothing but boxers. And I was like, I think I said something like, "Oh, I feel a little overdressed here," and that was kind of, you just know that that's the way it starts. And then I was bending where I didn't really agree with some of the strategies we were using, and I should have known, it's just not, I like to do things this way. It's tested, it's proven. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but it's the way that I feel the most confident in. There were some red flags, and
okay. So being authentic and true to yourself.
Being authentic, be true to yourself, but don't feel like you need to take every single business piece that comes your way, or every job, or every client. It's okay if things aren't a good fit. It doesn't make that person a bad investor or a bad person. It just isn't the right fit for us. And, I think, what's the phrase? People think that they can change them. You have a significant other. It's like, well,
right.
I can change them. You can't change. People are who they are going to be. And
absolutely,
it's a good fit for your business, or it's not really that good. There's an industry guru called Nick Murray, and I read one of his books early on. I think lessons translate to any type of business. But he said financial advisors, because that's who his audience was, and he was an advisor. He said, think of it as like Noah's Ark. You only have so many spots on your ark.
Okay.
So don't let someone on the ark that doesn't deserve that spot or isn't a good fit, right? Because I don't want it to make it seem like there's bad people. It's just not, there's bad fits, and they're great people. So, if you start taking business just to get it, those are good spots on your ark that if you were a little bit more patient or maybe did some other things, you'd find people that are a great fit. And those clients that you work with, you get excited to talk to, they appreciate the advice that you give. They actually listen and follow your advice.
They come on your podcast at a moment's notice,
right.
Those
they
people.
Come on your podcast, and so they do jazz hands. They play along. But, but that's hard. And I remember a lesson that a client and a friend taught me who was doing a career change. He was getting into real estate. And he was, I forget exactly what the specifics were, but he was helping me with something, and it just wasn't in his core what he does on a day-to-day. It was kind of a one-off situation. And he said, Joe, let me refer you to somebody in the office who's the subject matter expert. I want you to be well taken care of. And I said, well, doesn't that kind of cut into your commission if we move forward with this? And he said, yeah, but I would rather you be taken care of. That's more important to me. And I have the abundance mindset. And I was like, right, of course. I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? He's like, I would rather you be taken care of. I was like, no, the other part. He said the abundance mindset. I was like, yeah, what's that? And it was funny, and it's kind of embarrassing now to look back on it, but you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
The place where I was, it was a scarcity mindset. And it was, well, if you get one client, that's one less that I get, right? So early in my career, I was just kind of in this scarcity environment. And then he, who was doing a career change, and his spouse stays home, and he's got the weight of all the financial burden on his shoulders as he's trying to do the new thing. And I'm like, you really can't afford the abundance mindset right now. But now looking back, I'd say you can't afford not to have the abundance mindset.
It does make a difference.
It makes a huge difference. And so that really opened my eyes earlier in my career. I'm so glad I had that interaction and shifted that mindset, because it is so true. And it's the pie gets bigger. You don't need to focus on getting a bigger piece of somebody else's pie. Everything grows, and if you're good at what you do, there will always be plenty.
Sure.
So so that was a big shift early in my career, and I think it's paid off dividends.
That's a pretty big thing to learn early on.
Yeah, and it was funny because I couldn't really afford I was younger and early in my career and trying to build up the business, and I really just kind of went on faith. I said, this actually sounds more fun. It's less like cutthroat. I'll tell you, I got a piece of advice that sticks out, and it's kind of along the same lines as the abundance mindset. And an attorney I was working with, I don't know how it was relevant to what we were doing, but he gave me this lesson and it stuck with me. He said, Joe, you got to leave meat on the bone. And I said, what are you talking about? And he's like, meat on the bone. He said, maybe like in my world, there's an advisor who is facing really bad health issues and is forced into retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm the right fit for who his clients will, sort of his or her clients going forward. He said, you've got the upper hand there because that, it's a situation that, maybe there's like leverage or whatever it is. He said, but you never want to take advantage of that. You always want to leave meat on the bone. He said, because there will come a time, no matter what the situation is, where maybe I'm working with one of the clients of the advisor, and if they have a poor taste because I try to step on the jugular, noticing if there's some weakness or blood in the water or whatever the business cliche is, that person's not going to have a favorable opinion. And when the client goes back and says, hey, Joe recommended this, what do you think? He's like, Joe, in the back of his mind or her mind, they might think, well, Joe took advantage when I was in my whatever situation it was. He said, so you always want to leave meat on the bone. It's an investment for the future. And I'll tell you, if that wasn't some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and it kind of ties in with that abundance theory, I'm actually a really bad negotiator. I've done a few deals.
You shouldn't say that out loud, Joe. We've talked about this.
I know. And, so there's been some retiring advisors that I've done deals with, and they say, hey, here's kind of what I want. There's the situation. And I say, all right, sounds good to me. Let's do it. It's fair. Maybe it's a little bit more than I would want to pay. But leaving some meat on the bone. And every single one of those deals that I've done have been fantastic for the clients, has been fantastic for the retiring advisor, and has been fantastic for us. So it's a win-win-win. And leaving some meat on the bone will help you get those win-win-win where everybody comes out ahead.
I like that. So tell me this, when did you realize you wanted to be a financial planner? Was that like when you were 3 years old and everyone else was playing firefighter and you said, no, I want to do spreadsheets and look at the stocks?
Yeah, it was. Well, we didn't have money growing up. My parents were super young. So it wasn't a lot of people that get in this business have parents that are in the business or things like that. So we never even had much money. My parents were successful, but not at a younger age when I was growing up. So I didn't really know anything about it, but I knew I did want to go into business. So it was funny, we do these assessments and things like that when you're elementary, middle, high school, whatever. And I wanted a 9-to-5 desk job inside. Everybody wants to be like a firefighter, whatever. So I always wanted to do business, but I didn't know what it was. And I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I was shoveling walkways and mowing grass and trying to come up with different business ideas. And I sold T-shirts in college. So I always had
What was on those T-shirts, out of curiosity, if you don't mind sharing and you can share?
Yeah, it was, so where we went to school, we had just like some fun graphic or logo. I think I might still have one buried in my closet somewhere.
Okay.
But we went out to, on the weekends at parties, we were selling them for like $15, and I think we made maybe like $100 or $200, which is a lot, back then when you're in college.
Sure.
So I was always trying to figure out ways to, to make money and do it not just through like regular hourly whatever. And I did that too. But anyway, so I did an internship with a financial advisor, I think my junior year of college. And what I saw was the financial advisor, he would go into meetings with these clients. I'd hear laughs after the meeting. He would walk them like through the front door, and they would hug and they would smile. And he had flexibility with his time, and he had some nice stuff. And I'm like, I don't really know what this is, but I think this is what I want to do. And that was it. And his administrative professional, she really taught me about the business because he was actually out playing golf and coaching his kids football. He was not really around a ton. So I learned about the business, and I'm like, well, I could be my own boss. I've always had a fascination with money, mostly because we never had any, and I thought it would be cool someday to have a little bit of it. And then just personal relationships. I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. Being around people and helping people just fills my bucket, and it gives me energy. So I was like, I don't know exactly what all this is, but I'm going to figure it out. And I went to school at Salisbury, and they actually had a financial planner track for their major.
This is Salisbury University on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Correct.
Right.
And I think at the time, it was maybe only one of 50 colleges in the country that offered a CFP, or Certified Financial Planner designation, approved course.
Wow.
So I did the classes. And afterwards, I had to eat some humble pie applying for different jobs. And I wasn't getting hired anywhere. So then I ended up working at Ameriprise, where I got my licenses and found an opportunity that I would describe more as like an apprenticeship, where I worked for an established advisor and really kind of figured out how the business works before maybe like a residency, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Learned the ins and outs, and I observed, and I was the sponge that soaked up as much information, good and bad, as I could. And that's kind of how it all, grew into what we have here.
Okay. Tell you, you talk about your customers a lot. Give me some of the misconceptions about your industry, because I think a lot of people will listen to this, watch this, and say, oh, this guy's he's making a lot of money. He's not doing any work. He's taking advantage of his clients. I mean, you hear these stories, but I know you are different in so many ways. And we'll talk more about that. But what are some of those misconceptions that you confront either when you started or even today about what you do?
It's a relationship business. So I think one of the misconceptions, every industry's got folks that maybe aren't the best or what have you. But the problem is they get so much more attention than the good ones, which is unfortunate. But I think, one of the misconceptions is that financial advisors are earning commissions, and is this in my best interest, or is this just a product so you earn a trip? There was a gentleman I worked with, and he was telling me, I think it was like a in-law brother or sister or something, and earned a trip to Europe because they sold so much of a specific product or something. And he didn't feel really good about that as a client, because he's like, is this really good for me, or is this getting you to, France or whatever the thing is? But from what I've been in this business for a while, that is becoming less and less frequent. I think with the advent of just social media, everybody's so much more connected. There really is, the spotlight is on, and anybody that isn't doing a good job usually doesn't last long in this business, or, they get found out pretty quick. And so I think that misconception is getting better, that advisors are just looking for commissions and things like that. When we talk with our clients, we try to remove as much of the conflict of interest as we can. But at the end of the day, I'll give you an example.
Are you fee-based or still based on the investments?
So we're like 99% fee-based.
Okay.
Every single client relationship is a fiduciary relationship. I mentioned that certified financial planner. So I'm a CFP, and then both other advisors in the office are also CFP. So we're held to a fiduciary standard, even if the accounts aren't fiduciary. I'm very much I want as many tools available to me as possible. So if a client comes to me and they have an existing XYZ product or annuity or whatever, I want to be able to help them with that. And if we don't have the ability to do that business, then they're kind of, hey, good luck with that. We're going to focus on this. I want to look at the whole picture.
Okay.
the tool, I want as many tools in the toolbox. Now, maybe we're not going to need it, but anybody that's like saved that one screw or bolt or whatever, and then you get to use it later, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I held on to this thing.
Yes.
That's what I want with my business is, personal finance is just that. It's very personal. There is no one size fits all. And that is what makes it so difficult for a lot of these people to give blanket advice for everybody. You wouldn't tell somebody, hey, if you want to lose weight, go sign up for a marathon. Well, maybe they have pre-existing conditions or there's something that precludes them from doing something like that. That's not really good advice for that person. So, we need as much options available to us as advisors, and then we give very personal advice based on who's sitting across the table and what we think will produce the best outcome based on what their goals are, what they're trying to do.
How has the trend that a lot of people are now doing their own investing with various, it's easier than ever. I have an Acorns account and I can throw money in there and pick among 5 options, and it's sort of doing what in my mind is financial investing, and other people day trade. And we have such easy access now to all those tools ourselves. Right. Do you see a trend where a lot of people come in there and go, hey, I tried these things, it didn't work, I need a professional? Or do you see people going, I'll give you half my money, but I'm going to keep half, and in a year we're going to compare notes and see who did better? Or do you just get people who say, this is nice, but I can make more money on my own?
I think a lot of the clients that we work with, they want somebody that's looking at their flanks and making sure, hey, I don't do this all day, every day. I only have one life to live. This is the most amount of money I've ever had, hopefully. It's getting more and more important. It stresses me out. I just don't want to pay attention to it. I want an expert. There's TurboTax and there's accountants. And some people are totally fine with TurboTax. Maybe they're not really even doing a good job on TurboTax, but they won't know any different because they're not getting second opinions. But then there's always people that want that guidance. I think, just to carry that TurboTax analogy a little further, TurboTax is good if you have simple stuff. And when things get more complicated, I want to talk it through with an expert. I want the guidance. I don't know what I don't know. So we really have the hearts of educators here, and we take a lot of time and we invest in our clients' education, and we take a lot of time explaining things. And we've done that because I think it's just the right thing to do, but then there's also a good business reason, because those investments in the education and making this complicated stuff easy gives them a greater sense of confidence because they better understand it now, and the communication, we're on the same page. So taking a little bit of extra time up front is actually saving me a lot of time on the back end by like, well, why did you do this? And what is this? And I don't understand this. And what's the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
Yeah, and look, we're financial advisors. We're investors. So we know we put work in on the front end and what that can do over time as clients grow. And you don't have to have $1 million to work with a financial advisor. You just have to be a nice person and open to advice and coachable. And so the investing mindset carries not just with the actual investments, but with the way that we treat this business too. We've had lots of clients that started with $40,000 with us, and now they're, in the 2 Comma Club, they've got well over $1 million.
They must have started young.
Yeah. So, that's kind of how we view things, and there will always be do-it-yourself investors. Those are probably not good clients for us. They might be great people. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when you have the do-it-yourself, all of the good ideas were theirs and all the bad ideas were ours. And if people want to do it themselves, then I don't really want to stand in the way of that. I think we would just end up, in their eyes, be more of a speed bump to do whatever they were going to do anyway. But
what are some of the ways you educate people beyond just in those one-on-one meetings? So what are some of the tools you're using? I know you do some social media, right?
on a day-to-day basis, social media, anytime I get questions from clients, if I get like 2 or 3 in a week, I say to myself, that's a topic that probably more people are thinking of if I'm just hearing it from these few. So that's where we get a lot of our content for social media. We have a
Can we find you on social media? Since you brought it up, someone's going to watch this and be like, I want to see what he's doing. Where do we go?
So we're on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can find me, Joe Conroy, on LinkedIn. Facebook is Harford Retirement Planners.
Okay.
And we're also Harford Retirement Planners on YouTube.
With no T in Harford.
No T, right.
No
it's
T.
just HARFORD.
Yes.
Yeah, so Harford Retirement Planners on YouTube. We have, I think, over 200 videos that we've posted.
Okay.
And then, of course, I wrote a book on the topic.
Really? You wrote a book, Joe?
Financial planning at any age. Just rolls off the tongue.
It does. It's actually a great book. I was lucky enough to work with you on that, do some editing / publishing, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's, I found consistent themes with folks that were coming to see me depending on where they were at that phase of life. So for me, I'm in my late 30s. I got 3 kids. So maybe I'm thinking, if I haven't already, someone my age would be, do I need life insurance? Do I have a will? I got these kids. They're not getting any younger. School is going to get more expensive. Am I taking care of that? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? It gets complicated. But then once you're in your 60s, you probably, hopefully, don't have much left in the way of school expenses, and you're focused on retirement. So there's different priorities, and that was kind of the thesis for the book. And it turned out really well. It's an easy read in the sense that I didn't want to try to sound super smart and then confuse everybody. I am very, hopefully, approachable with my delivery of these super complex stuff. I know, so for example, if I go to a doctor and I just really don't know much about medical anything, and they start going into, I'm like, look, explain it to me like I'm a 3rd grader, all right?
Right.
Like in ways that I can understand. And I had this epiphany, and I can't remember the specific time or conversation that made me think this, but I'm like, well, there was one advisor that I used to work with, and his goal would be to sound like the smartest person in the room. And he probably was. But at the end of the day, clients would just throw their hands up, cry uncle, and say, I guess he's got it figured out. We'll just do whatever you say because I don't really know what you're talking about. And I'm afraid to ask questions because I don't want to feel like I'm dumb.
Right.
Know? And that's not really my style. I would like people to feel like they get it. Maybe you're not going to be an expert or you're not going to be a CFP like we are here, but at least know enough to be dangerous. So you're like, all right, I've got buy-in. I understand it. For me with medical treatment, forget all the medical jargon mumbo jumbo. If my knee is injured, give me what you think the course of action is based on your experience, your medical knowledge, education, blah, 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 blah. And one thing that we do, which I'm surprised is not as common as it is we say, look, here's the different options, blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying, what do you want to do? Well, that's the whole point of going to an advisor or a professional is you tell me what to do.
Right.
So we always say, look, obviously you're free to do whatever you think is in your best interest, or even if it's not, you can do whatever you want to do. But if I am you, here's what I would do. Knowing what I know as an expert in this field and knowing your situation the way that we just went through, here's what I personally recommend that I think you should do. And I think people are afraid to make that recommendation because I guess you could hear a no. No, that doesn't sound okay. Well, let me come up with this other option, or let me. So we're not afraid to give you what we think is our assessment of your best possible plan of action. Doesn't mean we're going to stick with it, and things can change in the future, and maybe we pivot. But yeah, I'm paying someone for advice. Give me advice. Like, what do you want me to do? What would you do if you were me? I ask that question often, and I work with a lot of different professionals helping me. Not financial advisor or anything like that, but just whatever it is, HVAC or this or that. And they say, well, you got 3 different options here. I'm like, well, pick one that you think is the best for me and let's do it.
Right. Well, I think you get a really key point that I see in my work in coaching and helping people write business books, which is they're not as focused on their customer. There seems to be a point with a lot of small business owners where they know more than their customer. And instead of asking their customer and making their customer, their client feel welcome, they want to tell them what the solution is. And often that's where it becomes difficult. And I know when I'm working with people on books, one of the really key parts is really thinking about who that audience is and what they need to know and where the gaps are, not what you want to tell them. You know, I can't do a podcast. I guess I could do a podcast because it's not hugely expensive. That's the Bob Graham experience, and this is exactly for me.
Right.
But if I do the Bob Graham experience and it's something that serves people, they might tell their friends. They might come back for a second episode. And a lot of times I think in business, small business owners just get to that place, especially in fields like yours where often you move up the ladder, you become the CEO of a company, you have employees who deal with the customers, and you're at that top spot, sort of in the ivory tower looking down. And so my question to you regarding that is, how do you, Joe, because you're at that place where you could be in the ivory tower looking down and telling people what to do, how do you avoid that if you do?
There's a interesting, or I found it interesting, graphic or meme or whatever it is, and it's the manager versus leader.
Okay.
And the manager like tells people, you know, leader inspires, and it can be a little cheesy, right? But I think there's, you know, of course, a seed of truth to it where I think as a leader of an organization or a team, you know, it doesn't take anything away from your effectiveness if you have somebody that's better than you at something on your team. I think that's actually such a benefit. It doesn't take away from your success or your competency, but put people that are really good at what they do and give them the freedom to do it. You know, I think nowadays, and you're seeing this, and the phrase during COVID, was it quiet quitting? People were ghosting or
just sort of disappearing from their job.
Just disappearing. And you know, this younger generation, the millennial, the Gen Z, they want it all, right? And I think a lot of the maybe older generations that some could be a little bit more stubborn or like, nah, you know, that worked at the same company for 30 years, you get your gold watch, you know, they have a tough time understanding why somebody would leave a business that's a good job just to pursue something that maybe they're more passionate about. But life is short, and I think that today's workforce, they really want to feel that they're having an impact and that they're a part of an organization that's doing good. And you can do well by doing good. It's not mutually exclusive. It isn't like the Scrooge McDuck where, you know, you're piles of gold coins and you're swimming in it and everybody, you know, there's abundance. You know, there's abundance mindset. Everybody can win. You just have to figure out, and that's where the trick is, how do you create the win-win-win where it's good for the team members here, it's good for clients or whatever customers you have with your business, but then you have to do it in a way where you got a little bit of meat left on the bone so that you get efforts for your time, your energy, and the risk and the financial stuff that you put into whatever it is that you're doing. So, but if you can figure out the win-win-win in business, it gives you a North Star that is always calibrated, and it does have a little bit more effort you have to put into finding the solutions, but then again, it pays dividends down the road because it makes everything easy. And as a leader of a team, you know where people are aligned and you're not dealing with micromanagement or things like that.
Now, you're in an industry, and there are many in this place, where a lot of the owners are older. I looked at my LinkedIn connections. I did some financial service publication work and met a lot of financial advisors, and they connected with me on LinkedIn. I looked at 200 financial advisors that I'm connected to. You're the only one that does not have gray hair.
Well, I don't know. It's starting to come in a little bit.
It's starting. I feel better. There's going to be a shift because there are studies that say half the small businesses in this country are going to change ownership, whether that ownership is someone younger or it goes away or it gets merged. I know this is something that's on your mind. What are you doing in that regard, and where do you see it going the next 5 to 10 years?
When I joined right out of college, well, I made a pit stop at Ameriprise, like I mentioned. I've heard an industry term, I can't take credit for it, but when you go to these financial advisor conferences, the phrase male, pale, and stale. It's a very...
Joe said that, not me.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's PC or not, but it's true. It's a stereotype, but one that does have some accuracy to it. And what we are doing is, I've been very intentional about that, because there are a lot of financial advisors that are going to be retiring and maybe they don't have a succession plan mapped out. So what we do here at Harford Retirement Planners is we operate as a team. And it's not just like a lot of financial advisor offices, they're a team where maybe they're just sharing office space and splitting expenses, and that's it. Everybody's got their own book of business. I came from a model like that, and I chose with a lot of intention to create this setup because it creates consistency. It creates the ability to, I'm not going to be around forever. Father Time is undefeated. So, I think we can best serve our clients by making sure that even if we're not around anymore, they're still taken care of. I think that's the ultimate value that we can add at the end of the day to clients, to make sure that no matter whether we're involved or not, they're good. So we have a team of CFPs, and as these older advisors, I think the average age is 56 for financial advisors.
I think that's a couple-year-old study, so it's probably closer to 60.
Probably closer to 60. There might be, there's some insurance companies that will basically put anybody that fogs a mirror on a phone to call their aunts and uncles and try and sell them something. So that probably skews the numbers down. But, we want to be a really good landing spot for financial advisors, because there's going to be a lot that are retiring over the next 10, 15 years and sooner. So we wanted to be a potential fit for those advisors as they look for, who's going to take care of their clients when they're out playing golf or doing whatever it is that they want to do in retirement.
So when you talk about a team, I want to just take a moment, because this is not a model that most of us are thinking about, and certainly not a predominant model in your industry. That team idea is that and I may get this wrong, so correct me where I go wrong, but you guys are selling products and services, and the money accrues. Let's say there's $1 million in the pot, and everyone shares in that, versus the more traditional model, which is Joe makes $500,000 and you get all the riches from that. Steve does $250,000, he gets the riches from that. And someone else does another $250,000, and you have an office staff that gets paid from the overhead.
Yeah, our setup is less like a individual advisor practice and more like an entity. Or at least working.
So an umbrella where everything falls into the same pot.
Yep. Everybody gets a very livable wage income. And then there are incentives for, the way we've structured it is net new assets.
Okay.
So instead of just bring everything in that you can, including the clients that maybe aren't a great fit long term, but that might get me a little extra money.
Right.
It's net new, which means that if any of these clients aren't a good fit, or they decide to leave, or we decide that it's not working out, or whatever the case might be, we don't want a bunch of stuff on the front end and then have to deal with putting out fires or things later on. So we're really just looking for people that are a good fit for our clients. So net new assets. It
Okay.
also means that our client retention rates need to be super high, right? So if you got $1 million going out the door as you're bringing in $1 million, it's not really doing anything for the
Right.
business or for the people that you're serving, right? You're just in this constant like rotation of retaining. Now I think our client retention rate, last I checked, was 98%, which
Okay.
is way above industry average.
Mm-hmm.
Because truth be told, Bob, we're not very good salespeople. Quite
We, by
often,
and large, financial advisors, or you, your company, or you personally, or all three?
our company in May, I
Okay.
give away the milk for free without making you buy the
Okay.
cow. But I know that people's circumstances change, and if people want a financial advisor, even if I tell you how all of this stuff works and I give away the secrets,
Mm-hmm.
you're either going to see value and your situation is going to change, and you want somebody that's going to be there for you or not. Um, so that's. But we were talking about teams, so let me get back onto that. So our structure, and then what we want is I want something that endures beyond me, and that's why I didn't name it the Joe Conroy Financial Advisor Group or whatever. The other thing too is that folks that are here with tenure and have certain defined goals can become partnered in the firm.
Okay.
So we have all these expenses, salary, overhead, all this stuff, and then anything that's left over is for the ownership group. So that way,
So, like a lot of law firms are structured.
basically, and you don't see a ton of financial advisor firms. Most financial advisors are solo, or maybe they have a business partner, but they run two separate practices and they just, share the office rent and things like that.
Another trend that I'm seeing is that there are a lot of financial planning operations that are looking at what would you say, ancillary services, corresponding services, services like, a financial advisor might buy a tax practice or an accounting firm or some of those things. Where do you see that going as a trend?
It's kind of difficult because even though accountants and financial advisors in this example serve largely the same clientele and taxes are very involved with what we do here, there's a lot of complement between the two and they work so well together. But the challenge is it's really two separate specialties. You wouldn't want to go to your podiatrist and have open heart surgery.
Right.
Right.
No.
And I think accountants are just like financial advisors in the sense that it's an aging industry. There's not a lot of young blood getting into it. So I think a lot of these accountants are going to have a tough time figuring out what to do with their businesses when they're done. And I think a lot of them are just going to end up closing down shop and just saying, good luck, everybody, because there isn't going to be a lot of succession involved for them.
Right. I was going to ask you also about a lot of the people watching, listening to this are going to be small business owners. I've heard a fair number of small business owners say that they can't work with a financial planner because their income's erratic or financial planner doesn't understand the need for liquidity, all those things. Do you run up against that? And what would you say about that?
Yeah, a lot of times I don't feel like we have enough, to work with a financial advisor. But you asked specifically about small business owners. Small business owners have some of the most value that you can add as a financial advisor because you got more tools available to you. So creating a company retirement plan, maybe we're doing profit sharing. If you've never heard those terms, don't worry about it. There's a lot of good advisors out there that can say, this is the way that it works, but I don't recommend it for you, or this would be a great strategy and here's why.
Right.
And there's a lot of difficulty with being a small business owner because you do have erratic income. You're not on a steady paycheck. There's also a lot of difficulty with the steady paycheck people because things get reorganized, businesses sell, and all of a sudden, are you going to be included in the new group? And, maybe you're on the other side of 50 and you're not the youngest person in the meetings anymore and you get let go and the job that you easily would have gotten 10 years earlier is now becoming more difficult to find. there's just so many things that can happen with people. At the end of the day, any good advisor, financial advisor, doctor, you just really, I think empathy is the most important skill. You have to
Okay.
truly want what's best for the person across the table. And sometimes that benefits you because you can provide the solution and, maybe put some food on the table for your family. And sometimes you just give somebody really good advice. It doesn't do anything for you, but you send them out into the world and you've got a fan who, sings your praises. And I do believe in karma, and those things do come back over time.
What would you say someone who is thinking of entering the industry right now?
It's difficult. It was getting more difficult when I started. So I started in 2008. So that was difficult just because the market dropped 50% in a year and everybody was freaking out. And I was like, it was a great experience to learn. And I didn't have a whole lot of clients because I just got started, and I got to watch other people and how they handled that. But younger people getting into it, I would, nobody wants to pay commissions anymore. A lot of times, I know a lot of the people that I started with worked at a big insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
They were selling expensive insurance policies. Interest rates were higher back then than they were in the 2000s. But you would make commission, and you do one insurance policy and you're able to pay your rent and put gas in your car. Nobody really wants that. Nobody wants big insurance policies. Right. If they're just getting started, there's a lot of other things. The other thing, when you're younger, is a lot of your peer group is also younger and they don't have any money either.
Right.
So to make it as a financial advisor, you got to get really comfortable with not having a whole lot, and you're really investing in your future, and it takes time. But like all things that you put the effort and have patience with, it turns into something really amazing. A lot of people get out before they see it, kind of start that J curve up where things get more comfortable.
Now, people don't know this, but I know this because I've known you for a while. You've done some pretty not traditional things in the course of starting your business. You left a big firm, moved about 20 miles away from it, started a practice in an area where there was certainly growth, where there was opportunity.
Yeah.
You didn't name it after yourself.
Yeah.
You bought a building and redid a building. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. You have a July 4th event that is like major. I've seen photos. I haven't been able to make it, but you pretty much have people lining a parade route, and you provide them food and beverages and all that good stuff. And you just did, or it's coming up this weekend or next weekend. It's the Soapbox Derby. You have a car and it's all decked out. These are not traditional things that you see financial planners doing,
right?
And really not small business owners by and large. And I forgot one. You also, your employees take a day and you move furniture into homes for people who can't afford furniture, right?
Yeah, we do company volunteer days. So Mike and I, for several years now, support Fresh Start Furnishings, and everybody that volunteers.
They take free furniture. Someone wants to donate their furniture. You go in, take it out of someone's house who doesn't want it, and you take it to someone who can use it, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very bucket filling, especially when you do drop offs to a family in need and they have a bare house. And when you leave, the kids have beds to sleep in and all that stuff. It's great. What I learned about this business, and I would say it translates to any business, is the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it really make a noise? If you are the best financial advisor in the world, but you don't market, nobody knows who you are, you're really limiting your ability to impact people positively because they don't know, right? So marketing is one of those things where it's kind of uncomfortable. It takes some investment in time or money or both. And it doesn't happen immediately. So most people give up on it, which is why if you can do it and do it consistently, that's where you can separate yourself from the crowd. So my frustration early in this business was, where am I getting clients? What am I doing to get clients? And I faced that struggle for a while, and I had the thought, I got to do more to get my name out there, to just have people know you, like you, and then eventually when they meet with you, hopefully they trust you, right? So marketing. The Soapbox Derby, and I don't do anything that I don't like to do. So the Soapbox Derby race, for example, which depending on when this comes out, it will probably be
It's right around now, either way.
But
and your son's driving the vehicle, right?
Yeah, and family, I know it's kind of cheesy with business, like we're a big family, but then, but I truly view it that way. And I think you can't just talk out of both sides of your mouth. Like if you're saying that you have family values, you have to live it, or people aren't going to, just saying stuff.
Doesn't make it true.
Doesn't make it true. And people see right through it, So family is very important to me. My kids are only going to be this little for so long. So how can I do something that helps the town of Bel Air, which I grew up in, hometown. I love it.
Small town north of Baltimore in state of Maryland, for those of you outside the area.
Right. Yeah. Not Bel Air, California. That's
correct.
A little bit different. Remember I said we did not come from money.
That's where the Fresh Prince went to, right?
Exactly.
Not anywhere close.
No, but still amazing. Anyway, so.
Yes, very nice.
So, I pinch myself because I have a business in my hometown where I grew up, job creator, helping other people support, but the family thing. So if somebody in the office has a child who's sick or something, go home. That's why we're a team. We'll take care of it, so the team is the family, but take care of the family at home first. Like that takes precedence.
Mm-hmm.
And how cool is it that I can race, well, not me, but my son's going to drive the Soapbox Derby car down Main Street in my hometown where I grew up with the company logo on the side of it. Like it's good, positive stuff. And I feel so fulfilled and fortunate to be able to give back to people in town. And maybe it's because we haven't been here for 40 years, but when people, reach out to us and can you support the, Bel Air Elementary School Walkathon or whatever, we're happy to do it. We really want to invest in the community because the community is where we generate revenue, and we want to be that win-win-win for everybody, where we're benefiting the community, clients that we work with, and everybody that's a part of this as some stakeholder is all more positive after having an interaction with our group.
So we are about to do the Bob Graham experience. I didn't warn you about this, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Right.
But first, what can we do for you today? If someone's watching this, listening to this, what's something they can do for you, big or small?
I'm going to do two acts. One is let's connect on social media. So Facebook, Harford Retirement Planners, YouTube, Harford Retirement Planners.
I'll put it in the show notes if you're driving or if you're in a meeting.
Right. And if you want to work with a financial advisor that uses analogies, sometimes funny stories, usually I'll laugh at whatever jokes I tell before anyone else has a chance to. And as a terrible sales person, that's what we do here. And it's not just me, it's everybody else here.
And they can be anywhere in the U.S., right? Doesn't have to be Maryland or anything
anywhere.
Like that,
It just
right?
has to be U.S.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you're in Abu Dhabi, that unfortunately is not somebody that we can work with. But yeah, I've been, Bob, so I had my appendix out last year. And I was really at the mercy of the medical professionals to diagnose what the issue is. Like I knew there was something wrong because I was in pain, but I didn't know. And so I know what it's like to go into something that is an intimidating experience. It can be painful, both literally or figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
Lose sleep over, whatever the case might be. And if you have somebody that you can trust and helps you through whatever it is that you're going through, what an amazing experience that can be. And we've also gone through experiences where it was not a good outcome because X, Y, or Z wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
I know the impact that good advice and good character and people have when I'm looking for help. And I get excited to get up in the morning, like you mentioned earlier, and go to work and try to make this easy for people and help.
Okay, you ready? We're going to do the Bob Graham experience.
All right, so
now,
the experience.
This is going to be 5 questions. 5 questions. I want 1-sentence answers if at all possible.
Perfect.
Okay? 5 questions, 1-sentence answers if possible. First one, what's your most important inspiration?
I would say probably my dad.
Okay.
Watching the way he operates and holds himself.
Nice. Biggest daily challenge?
Not hurting myself doing mundane, regular, everyday tasks now that I'm getting older.
Okay. Your guiding principle?
Win-win-win.
Okay. Skill you didn't know you had that you rely on now?
Storytelling.
Good one. I like that. And a book you'd recommend to everyone?
Well, take it a step further. Story selling for the financial advisor.
Okay.
Now, you said everybody, and I would argue that anybody that has to communicate to other people in a way that you actually register, that book really speaks to the way that people want to hear information now, not the way it was done 30, 40, 50 years ago. It really changed my viewpoint on how to communicate with people.
You, Joe, just survived the Bob Graham experience. Yay! Wow. Congratulations. So I want to thank you for coming on here. This has been really great. You achieved the goal I had, which was to give some really powerful insights and some wisdom. And I want to thank everyone who's watched and listened. And I can tell you, Joe, this is not just words with Joe. He lives exactly what he's saying about himself. My girlfriend was lucky enough to run into you, and she met you at a local store. And afterwards, she's like, oh, I see why you like him. Not that I don't like all my clients, but it was like, right. She just saw the way you engaged with her, the way you asked questions, and it wasn't just asking questions to ask questions.
Right.
It was asking questions like you genuinely were concerned about an injury she had had.
Yeah.
That's
interesting. I appreciate that feedback.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you doing this. Folks, we will be back with another episode of the Bob Graham Experience real soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was the Bob Graham Experience. Want to be a guest and experience it for yourself? Visit thebobgrahamexperience.com to get on the list. And of course, please rate us and listen to other episodes wherever you had the Bob Graham Experience. Until next time.